Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Chronic Goes Carnivore. Today we are going to be talking about the ketogenic diet and autism. But first, a quick disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I am just somebody who's having fun doing some research and chatting about it. And really, if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty of anything that I'm posting, talk to your doctor, talk to your pediatrician if you're gonna do this with your minor, dietitians, cardiologists, neurologists, the whole alphabet soup. Consult them before you do anything based on what I've discovered. As always, I have my notes, so if you hear that, that's what it is. I first wanted to kind of get into why this particular topic. So for me, it is super personal. My adorable little daughter, who I lovingly call a Goblin, because good Lord, she is a total chaos goblin. She has level 2 autism. And, it's something that I can't necessarily say I'm surprised. But it does make me a little sad. Not for anything serious, but like, I know that she's going to have some hardships and she's going to struggle. And that just makes my heart hurt, But I also kind of expected something like this because she is an IVF baby, and they are at a higher percentages for things like autism. They're not sure why, but again, it was a risk that I knowingly took. My husband is also, I believe, somewhere on the spectrum. Really confirmed that suspicion as she does some of the behavior she does, because they both do them. So we are 100% a neurodivergent household. As her mom, it's not only my job, but my privilege to make her life as functioning as possible. And for me, that's setting up her environment the way that best supports her needs. So we've got a lot of sensory stuff. We have a lot of delayed milestones that we just hype up. We're working on communication right now. And she is in a medical program for ABA therapy. And I gotta say that was a gift from the gods. Because in 6 months, she's gone from being nonverbal to mastering 3-word sentences. Like, we're working on 4-word sentences. She's gone from hitting every physical milestone at least 18 months late to her physical therapist telling me, yeah, in the next 8 months, she's going to be able to graduate from needing a physical therapist. But it got me really thinking, like, my own journey. Given all of the psychological benefits that I'm having, would keto or a low carb something another benefit her? No, I'm not talking like crazy all of a sudden change. I'm just talking like what in theory would happen if she ate a ketogenic style, a low carb style of diet. And by that I mean like 75 grams of carbs or less a day. Mostly because all of her safe foods are carbs. And that is mostly because it's a predictable, consistent texture. So if you think of like French fries, you can go to any fast food restaurant and get a French fry and you're gonna have a very similar experience, right? So I know that as I work with her pediatrician, it's going to be a very gradual process. But I also know that she's got some of the comorbidities that are known to happen with autism. So really, like, what is autism? So it is characterized as a communication and a social deficit. That can look like being nonverbal or communicating via sign language or a tablet, or just really needing a lot of time because the processing of the verbal language is impacted. Now, for my kiddo, we tried the boards, we tried the sign language. She wanted nothing to do with any of that. She wanted to be verbal. She's been that way forever and a day. A girl has a stubborn streak, a country mile wide, and I can't even be mad because she 100% gets it from the lineage of women that we come from. So we've been working on her speech, and she's doing great. But it's also characterized as an inability to really process the volley cadence that happens in a social situation where you pause, you intake, and you respond, which is how most of the world functions, right? They don't necessarily recognize that or know what to do with it or process fast enough to really get in a rhythm. It's also one of those things that social protocol means nothing. You know, especially in children, scientists have noted that they're not going to bring you in to their play. They want to be alone, or they don't know how to bring you into their play. So if you look at a neurotypical human toddler, they're going to go, look, mommy, look. And they're going to show you the object that has caught their attention, and they're going to drag you into it. People on the spectrum don't do that. They might as they get older, as they're more indoctrinated into social expectations. But I can tell you firsthand experience, my kid doesn't do that. She doesn't want me anywhere near what she's doing. She wants to be alone. She wants to play alone. She's going to do her own thing. In terms of how prevalent this is. Now, you always hear, back 40 some odd years ago, we didn't have autism. I can't really speak to that because I am just a mom who's doing research. But given the fact that even in the last, 60 years with the DSM-4 to the 5, changing criteria, it wouldn't surprise me that people would say that, because we're now getting down into a more of a minutia, like the nitty-gritties of the diagnosis. Like even, in the DSM-4 to 5, Asperger's, which is now considered level 1, was a completely separate diagnosis. So in my personal opinion, because science cannot agree, I think that we had just as much. It just was considered, oh, well, so-and-so, it is the town's weirdo. You know, and it might not have been as severe. But if you also look at, 30 years ago when I was born, they would have thrown people like me into an insane asylum because I'm a cripple. And I'm not going to go into the whole discussion on labels. Way back in my grandpa's day, that's what they called us. We were the R words, we were the cripples, and we were put somewhere and forgotten. So I think a lot of what that is exactly that. It's people didn't see it because it was taken from them. It was hidden away in a dusty corner. Tangent aside, I have seen several sources now differ on the rate of occurrence. So one of the articles I pulled had affecting somewhere between 3 and 6 out of 1,000 people. According to the Mayo Clinic, it's 1 out of 50. Yale, from about 8 years ago, deemed it 1 out of 100. So needless to say, science is confused. But regardless, even if you're taking like the 3 out of 1,000, even 6 out of, even if it was 10 out of whatever, that's still really high. All things considered, that is a very high statistic. Good gravy. So it's pretty common, but I think most people either mask really well or they are in a place where they couldn't get the support they needed, and or they just had a very low support need. One thing that they were consistent on was the fact that boys are more likely than girls to be affected. There is some consensus among the professionals that I have found information from that it might be because girls have an XX chromosome instead of an XY. There's something about that duplication that has a protective element, and we're not sure why, but it's a consensus. So one of the things that was across every study, every YouTube video, every professional talking, is that there is a high comorbidity rate between autism and so things like epilepsy. I actually have some statistics. Epilepsy occurs in about 26% of autistic human beings. 50 to 80% suffer with a sleep disorder of some variety. Fortunately, my child is one of them. We spend a lot of hours awake at night. Gut issues between 23 and 70% of the autistic population. And this is either described or attributed to constipation and diarrhea, which plays a huge part in my research later, so we'll get into it. And there's a bigger prevalence in psychological mayhem, things like anxiety, depression, ADHD, intellectual disabilities, schizophrenia. All of these things can be linked with autism. Not necessarily, they don't have a, like, if you have one, you will have, the other one. But there is a strong, co-occurrence. That's the word I'm looking for. So we're going to get a little bit into stuff that I don't necessarily understand fully, but I thought it was super interesting. In regards to the GI problems, because they're now really getting into the research on the link between your gut, the bacteria, and your overall brain health. They have shown that some of the things that are required to happen in the gut, things like disaccharides and some of the other processes that go into the glucose absorption, are chronically low or missing in people who have autism spectrum disorder. So like there's an actual physiological link in the gut. There's also a link in the mitochondria, which I am seeing a definite theme over like the last 4 or so videos I've researched for, that the mitochondria is damaged and that causes a lot of problems. But back to the gut. So there are things in the gut that help you break down. They basically take over from where saliva left off, and they help you break down what you're consuming. In particular, there is a component called SGLT1. There's a 5. There's a few things, but I want to focus on the SGLT1. So it's found in your small intestine. So it's the thing that's immediately taken over after your stomach has said, okay, I'm done with this food. Now it's your turn. And it's the thing that converts these bigger chunks of food down into monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides. I don't understand a lot of it. However, it's important for your digestion. It's important for how the bacteria in your gut eats it, that these processes happen. In specific relation to the SGLT1, it's a compound that directly is linked to the transportation of glucose from your digestion through that blood barrier, and then that goes through the whole glucolysis process. So if you are deficient in that, your body's going to be working a lot harder. You're going to have GI gut problems, either with constipation or diarrhea. Both. You can have both at once, which is unfortunate. And as you can imagine, this is also impacts how you absorb glucose. So you're literally in a place where carbohydrates are actually harming your system, and or you're not effectively using them, so your body is having to work even harder to function, which is kind of a problem. Well, another thing that the science community has agreed on is that there is no one gene that contributes to autism. They have proven that it is several genes that contribute either in a deficiency or or just a damaged copy, or like it got turned on in the wrong order. Something's going on. In terms of gut function, there's, I believe, 5 different genes that contribute to the breakdown and absorption of carbohydrates and sugar. And if you're deficient in one of those genes, you could have GI problems. And this also can lead to the types of bacteria that are growing in your gut. They help or hinder. GI problems aside, what else shows up as a problem that we have seen in relation to autism spectrum disorder? So I know I talked a little bit about this in my mental health video, and if I remember, I will link it. The GABA and the glutamate in your brain, they're neurotransmitters. Glutamate is an excitatory transmitter. GABA is a more calming transmitter. They have found that consistently that people with autism spectrum disorder have an excess in glutamate and a deficiency in GABA, which just means that their brains are chronically overexcited, which leads to inflammation. They've also kind of shown that ASD people in general have more inflammation in their brains, which, leads to oxidative stress and all of these things that are super bad for everything, which can cause, behavioral issues that we see in autistic kiddos. What's all this got to do with the ketogenic diet? So we're gonna, it feels like I'm beating a dead horse every time I talk about it in one of these videos, because you go over the same talking points. But keto is neuroprotective. It deals with the inflammatory responses in your body. It helps you convert glutamate into GABA, which then calms down your brain. In terms of the comorbidities like epilepsy, it increases obviously, it produces more ketones, which increases your threshold for seizure activity. And eating a lot of the fatty acids that you do on a ketogenic diet have a protective element on your neurotransmitters, which again goes back to excited brain versus calm brain. The ketogenic diet also plays a role in your mitochondrial organelles, which I talked about extensively in my last video. One of them. I think it was my mental health video. Or my cerebral palsy video. One of the two. I'll link them down below. So when your mitochondria is damaged, and they've made a correlation between damaged mitochondria and autism. So when your mitochondria is damaged, so many processes get affected. And a major process is the production of ATP, which is literally energy. It's what your body runs on. So if you have less mitochondria, you're going to have less ATP. When you're not forcing your body to go through the glucolysis process of taking whatever crap food you're eating on a standard American diet and then turning that into sugar and then converting that sugar into energy, that takes so much energy for your body, which is why so many of these conditions have a huge element of fatigue. So when you use the Krebs cycle, which is your body making ketones, you bypass that. So you're literally putting your body at a more efficient way to exist. And those ketones are so important for your brain, for your body. Ketones increase the need for more mitochondria in your body because now you're burning fat, which then increases as a natural consequence. More mitochondria means more ATP in your system. So you're literally, even though your mitochondria is damaged, more mitochondria is more ATP. And there is, unfortunately, science has yet to work through fixing a damaged mitochondrial blueprint. Because once it's damaged in your brain, you will forever be using that damaged blueprint. One of the things that I saw in a couple of the studies I looked at was that they have really linked an suppressed immunoresponse and an increase in inflammation in the autism body, which is fascinating. And I need to do more research into that element because I am not sure why that link is important, but the fact that it was mentioned more than once in a scientific study tells me that it's hitting somebody's radar somewhere. And I need to go figure out what that is. But there's a link between immunoresponse and extra inflammation in an autistic body. As we know, keto reduces the amount of oxidative stress in your brain and in your body, which then leads to a healthier cell cycle. There's going to be less cell death, less disruption in your body, which again leads to the whole energy expenditure. A couple of the studies have shown a causal link, and I can't say a definitive link because the study pools for most of these studies are A, very small, and B, you can't really do human trials because it's unethical. So a lot of them are just, hey, will you be willing to try this diet and give us information? So, and you also have the additional frustration of you're dealing with kids, and kids don't want to eat keto. So a lot of the studies that I looked at were comparing these keto children who were doing it from a range of like 3 months to like a few years against their same age counterparts in terms of like milestone development, all that kind of stuff. So the room for error is very large. So they can only say there's a causal link. Not a definitive link to the ketogenic diet and a lot of the neurological junk that goes into so many disorders, but a lot of the comorbidities that go along with autism and the inflammation. But they've shown some causal links to a lot of things, which is super cool. So specifically with the gut health, because so much of what I found was linked to gut health. The less symptoms that these kids were having on a gut perspective, whether that was constipation and the pain that comes from that, diarrhea and the pain that comes from that. A couple of their studies showed that sometimes you just have random pain in your gut for no reason. But with the I don't want to say curing because that's not a thing, but with the progressive increase in or decrease in GI problems, there was an increase in improved behavioral symptoms. So literally, you heal the gut, you heal the brain. That's what it comes down to. So with that, they noticed a reduced symptomology in the ADHD kiddos. They saw a reduction in the social withdrawal that happens in rats and kids. And they saw a decrease in some of the repetitive behaviors, the OCD-like behaviors that kids on the spectrum are often seen doing. They don't know why, but they have discovered the link. They've seen cognition improved with these children and teens on a ketogenic diet. It's been shown to boost attention span, increase your executive functioning, and your overall metabolic health. A lot of these kids were getting, they were biopsying the gut, basically, and doing a lot of work that way instead of just basing their findings on fecal matter. Some of the studies did base upon bowel movements, but they found that overall taking the measurements from a gut perspective was actually more consistent and showed a better, more accurate correlation, which I thought was super interesting. But in terms of ASD and kids, right? And I'm talking like 17 and younger. Good luck. Again, consult your doctor. Figure out a meal plan that is a wide variety, but that might have some safe foods for your kiddo, so they're not just going 0 to 60. You're gonna want to do a gradual transition of introducing more fats, more protein, less carbs. And again, consult your medical professional. It is so important because nobody knows long-term effects, yada, yada, yada. I firmly believe that with me as an N of 1, I could care less about long-term effects because I feel fantastic. I, as a mom, am hesitant because I just am. So it'll be a thing where we get into discussions with her pediatrician about all of this and getting her thoughts, her opinions. And really, for my Goblin, my concern is her gut health and her sleep. She struggles with a lot of foods. She's not getting enough sleep, and she has constipation and diarrhea problems. So I need to figure out how to help her. And if that means that we need to change the carbohydrates into something else, then great. Like if she's sensitive to gluten like I am, like let's go, right? So some of the common challenges are obviously going to be the food restriction or preferences. My kiddo really doesn't like protein. And I get it, because a lot of the times the texture throws me off too. Um, so it's a matter of figuring out how to balance their plate while trying to do this gradual transition. So for me, I typically will put a protein, a fat, and a carb on her plate. It's typically going to be a high protein pasta or some rice, because those are both super safe foods for her. But yeah, another challenge could be social situations. Things like you might be packing meals for your kid, or they will be. It's things like going to restaurants. Like, how is that going to work? Well, you're going to have the same struggles you would have as an adult eating this way. Another thing that they made it pretty clear was to check ketones, which, aside from the very large, well, duh, there was a consensus that that might be extremely difficult when you're dealing with a toddler. I, having a very, very strong-willed 3-year-old, I cannot imagine trying to check ketones, which is probably why we'll be doing just a low-carb version, just because I'm not sure how we would check ketones, because we still haven't figured out potty training. On a brain level for my child, she's probably going to be closer to 5 by the time she's potty trained, which is fine. But you also have to think about where they are cognitively, and I don't think she's in a place yet where we can do this. I mean, I can try until the cows come home, till I'm blue in the face, however you want to say it, and I'm going to. However, I'm not going to take away her safe foods, because some days that's the only food she eats. Some days that's not even reliable, right? So, possible solutions to the problems. Develop a very wide range of meals. For me, I've set up a meal plan for the week. I will pick a protein that I am having, because I am obviously attempting and failing a lot of the times a carnivore style. So I will pick a protein. I will consult my husband to what vegetables he would like with the said protein, and then I will pair it with a carb that I know is safe for my toddler. A lot of the times that's just like a buttered noodle, or a specific red sauce that she doesn't mind, or it's, rice, which she really likes. Occasionally she'll do beans, not very often. Also a fat, so like a cheese, or most of the time I'll just put some heavy cream into her chocolate milk to get that fat up, which is so good for them. Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do about the diet. I think it's going to be a lot of talks with a pediatrician on my end. It's just so, like, the struggle that you have as a parent is something, and there are so many days where she goes on a food strike where she won't eat anything but Nutter Butters or pretzels, and she won't even eat chocolate milk, which she is such a chocolate milk girly. So I'm kind of left wondering, well, now I have all this information now. I have the evidence from myself. Now, what do I do with that? And the answer really is there's not much I can do about it, is there? Like she's 3.5. She's gonna eat what she eats. The only thing I can do is present it, keep presenting it to her. And eventually she'll want to take a bite. She'll want to look at it. She'll want to touch it, which she does frequently. She'll go to my plate or my husband's plate and she'll go bite. Like I want a bite. So we'll give her a bite. And 90% of the time she'll spit it out. But she's trying it, which is really my goal right now, is to get her to at least touch, taste, squish, use those senses, use those senses to explore the food. Like, that's literally where we're starting right now. And like I said, some days she wants nothing of what I've cooked, and the only thing she's going to eat is Nutter Butters and pretzels or Chex Mix. Like, those are the three popular things right now. Just going to take it slow. There's a statistic out there that I forget what it is, but it's like X amount of times that a child can be presented with a food before they're willing to either say they like it or not, is something like 10 times. Now, I'm assuming that number is based on a neurotypical human being, which tells me it's probably going to be closer to 50 times for my child. So really my gradual take right now is just presenting more protein, more fat, and less carbs. I will be starting to track everything that I have provided to her. And I say it that way because with her medical program, I pack her lunch every day. Some days she eats all of it. Very rarely does she eat all of it. Some days she's only eating the pretzels and the Chex Mix provided. So what I am going to do is I'm going to build her a meal plan based on 75 to 100 grams of carbs a day, which is considered a low carb diet, not a keto diet, and prepare her carbs within those, and present more protein, more fat. If I can get her to eat a vegetable, I will just scream it from the rooftops. She will eat some fruit occasionally. So we're gonna just gradually introduce all of this and see what she's willing to try, what she says no to immediately, and kind of see where her preferences are, because I have to work with her. I can't just go, well, she'll eat when she's hungry. I hear that all the time from the internet, from family, and the answer is, well, no, she won't. She would rather starve to death and die than eat something that is wrong in her brain. If it's slimy, she's not going to want it. Like things like yogurt and stuff, she won't touch because they're slimy. So, and I just laugh and I look at them and go, you're dumb. Because it's not that simple. She won't eat. She would rather go hungry than eat something that is wrong. Which is why we're doing this at a glacial pace. And right now it's just put it on her plate, see how she does. Because I would rather have my child at this point in her life fed with a as balanced nutrition as I can get than worry about, oh my God, she has pasta on her plate. So having all of this knowledge in my brain, my stance as a mom is still, I'd rather my kid be fed and happy than following a specific diet plan. And part of me is screaming because if it can help improve her symptoms, why wouldn't I? And the answer is, well, I need my child fed first. First and foremost, I need her fed. I will continue to put things on her plate that she'll tell me, no, 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 mommy, no. And I'll go, well, you don't have to eat it. And that's fine, but it's gonna be presented to you. And she is learning that lesson. She's learning that I will put whatever I want to on her plate. And she doesn't have control of that. What she does have control of is what she eats. And I think over time, like we've switched from regular pasta to a higher protein pasta, which doesn't really do much, like, oh goodness. Doesn't really do much in a whole, but she's getting a little bit more protein. It'll be things, just slow things. That hopefully by the time, she's a preteen, we'll have her switched over completely. But yeah, we'll see. Like when you have other issues on top of what your body's doing, it is so hard to exist. And I believe that she has the right parents for where she's at in life. She's got a father who understands her in a way that I don't. But she also has a mom who understands her in a way that dad doesn't have the perspective on. I have the food issues. I understand that I would rather starve before eating something that was wrong. I get it. And we have fought so hard to get her to the point where she's at. And I know so many parents who wouldn't bother, who don't bother. And it confuses me. But yeah, so anyways, that's what I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope it was at least entertaining. It's certainly been a lot. I don't think this will be my last video on this subject, just because there's so many things about autism, specifically keto or not, that I want to learn, and I will scream it from the rooftops when I do. So if you are still here and you liked what you've seen, please give me a like, give me a comment, give me a subscribe. It really helps my channel and I would so appreciate it. And I will see you in the comments. Bye.